So it's wonderful to be in the one platform for today. So my name is Damayanti Buchori, and I'm from CTSS. I'm the head of the Center for Transdisciplinary and Sustainability Science from IPB University, Indonesia. And this is a webinar which we call the TTT, or Transdisciplinary Tea Talk, because it's an afternoon here. So we like to see this as a tea talk. And this is, I think, our 30th or our 29th tea talk for the year. And we will have a guest today. It's wonderful for us to have a guest that I will introduce you shortly. But before that, for those of you who does not know CTSS yet, just a little bit information about CTSS. So the Center for Sustainability in IPB, we are, I would like to say, a think tank for sustainability issues. And we work across from terrestrial to also marine. And our mandate is to develop sustainability sciences, especially for tropical island country like Indonesia. So in addition to do research, we're also conducting training and also teaching transdisciplinary and sustainability issues. So for today, I would like to welcome Praise Uke. Is that Uke, how I should read it? Praise Uke. Hello, Praise. How are you?
I'm good. Good morning, Prof.
Good morning to you. Hope you have rest well and ready to face the day. And we will start with a webinar. So here is a short profile of Praise. He is an experienced senior technician with more than 10 years in the field of international development, environment, climate change, and sustainable natural resource management, rural development, and also poverty reduction. So Praise has international experience working across countries, and he has worked a lot, associated a lot with the IFAD, International Fund for Agriculture Development, and also climate environment specialist since 2017 to the present. And he has worked also with the World Bank on the food system transformation, very important subject, and also climate finance, Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, AGRA, and also a senior climate advisor for sustainable solutions for Africa from 2020 to 2022. And he received his background in education. He has received his master in business administration on environmental management at Wales, Bangor University, and also MA in environmental leadership in Theory Graduate School of Leadership in Belgium. And also has received management and strategic management and leadership at level 7 at the Chartered Management Institute in England. And previously, he started his education from agricultural soil sciences, his bachelor from agricultural soil sciences. So he's practical in agriculture, like me, from Ebony. Ebony State University in Abakaliki. And currently, he's also a fellow at CTSS from our university in IPB, and also has worked across various countries on Environmental Institute, has been associated with Environment Institute of Australia and New Zealand, and also IUCN, no, not IUCN, International Union of Soil Sciences, and then also a member of Soil Science Society in Nigeria, and also from Institute of Environment Management and Assessment, and member of the Young Professional for Agriculture Development, and also an alumni of the International Association of Agriculture Students and Related Sciences. So Chris has international experiences, work across several countries. I don't know how many countries, but he has worked a lot in Indonesia, and that's how I met Pris. And today, we will be very honored. We are honored to have Pris to present his experiences on developmental issues from concept to implementing in the field. So please, welcome to our webinar. It's an honor to have you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you once again, Prof. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here this morning it's morning where I am. I look forward to, having a good time with you all. My experience with CTSS has been one of, great encouragement, learning, and all of that. This morning, I'll be sharing briefly on from concept to impact. And this is part of a series that would help anyone who, I know we have a lot of professionals online. We also have people who would like to go into, development, but they don't even know where to start from. And also NGOs who want to come into the space of getting funding for their projects, but don't know how this works. So I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Nancy Humphrey from Nigeria. She is she leads the neighborhood initiative for advancement for women in Nigeria, and she has actually mobilized a lot of persons from Africa to join this morning. Welcome, Nancy. Okay, so
welcome, Nancy, and thank you to all our new friends.
Yeah. So from concept to impacts, you see, oftentimes the problem is not the idea. The problem is how to bring that idea into a concept. And this is the most critical stage of the life cycle of a project. Oftentimes we have ideas, and why it doesn't fly is that you've not been able to conceptualize this idea. I have a couple of slides and we'll go through them, and then I will, speak about other things. The idea of this of this presentation is to spark that interest for young people to come into development, especially natural resource management, because we have a lot on health, we have a lot on other areas. But from my experience in the field, we're lacking a lot of professionals in natural resource management, especially as it has to do with development projects. There's a certain way multilaterals want to see their projects written. There's a certain way they want to see the concept. And if it's not in that way, people cannot even just get anything to do. Okay, so what are the drivers? What are the issues in natural resource management? We have climate risk, biodiversity loss, water stress, land degradation, and then issues around livelihoods, that's social issues. Oftentimes, if you're not able to bring all of this together, yes, there are standalone projects that, say for instance, you're doing something for Jeff, which is the Global Environment Facility, which is usually heavy towards the biodiversity side of things. However, when you are, actually there are different kinds of projects. There are projects called Program of Loans and Grants. You see that with UNDP, IFAD, and so on. There are also standalone projects. There are projects that are climate finance based, And so when designing a project, it's important to understand, how do I frame my concept to accommodate these 5 pillars? Now, the example, there's a case study at the end of this presentation, and I'll be looking at watershed management. So everything I'm doing is looking at that watershed management. So I'm looking at what are the drivers. What's if I'm trying to solve this problem, what should I take into consideration? Now, for climate change, mitigating impacts, fostering resilience. How do I protect the diverse ecosystems for biodiversity loss? How do I ensure that water is available both for livelihoods and both for agriculture? How do I ensure that even while assessing these natural resources, the soil is not degraded? And then how do I empower the communities to be able to manage these resources? So there's the project lifecycle at a glance. And so it will start from your idea. So you have a good idea.
Sorry, are you going to share your screen? Because we haven't seen.
Serious?
Yes.
I did. Oh, my bad. Can you see me now? Can you see it? Can you see my screen? Okay.
Maybe if you want to start from the first slide again, because we...
Yes, I will. Yes, I will. 1 minute. Okay. So these are the drivers of natural resource management. I was talking about climate risk, biodiversity loss, water stress, and from this chart, you're able to see where the real issues are. You see, they cut across board. Yes, climate risks, because it connects a lot of things, and so the risk is high, especially in Southeast Asia and in Africa. And even now in Europe, you see a lot of things happening around this. In fact, the city where I live, it rained 2 weeks ago, and farms were submerged. So this is a project life cycle at a glance. So you start with your idea. So you want to solve a problem to manage water. Now this involves recognizing a need or opportunity to address this problem that you've identified. Now there are key terms: identify the problem and then do an opportunity analysis. Does this idea fit into the context which I found myself? Is this something I have capacity to do? Is this something I can find stakeholders who would be interested in doing this? Your opportunity should also look at the resources available. Do I have the time? Do I have the manpower? Can I get manpower to do this? Then can I get financial resources to do this? Now, number 2, which is the concept development, is a full section on its own. But see, when you come to, let's say you're submitting a concept note to, say, IFAD. What IFAD would like to see is the problem you want to solve, the background, and then who are you targeting? What problems are you solving? Do they include cross-cutting themes like financial inclusion, social inclusion, climate and environment, nutrition, issues around young people? What kind of problem do you want to solve? Who are you targeting? And how are you targeting these people? Have you tried to disaggregate the targeting to know exactly who you're targeting? Because it's one thing to have an idea, and then when you come, it is at this stage that a lot of projects get rejected because your targeting has not been properly done. And so after you've done your targeting, then you can now go to break up that idea into components. In how many components do I want to solve this problem? Do I want to have a technical a technical component, then an implementation component, and then a component that manages the project? Or do I want to have, say for water management, watershed management, how would I structure these components? And the number of components you have will determine the resources, the number of people, the scope, and all of that. It also helps you do your budgets, because if you miss this stage of breaking down your idea into components, then it is difficult to manage. And so the next stage will be the design itself. And it's at this point you now look at things like your assessments, the baseline survey. What do I need to get? Say, for instance, I'm working in South Sumatra. What do I need? Where do I go to? Where's this problem most prevalent? How do I get my the information I need to support? How do I build the rationale for this idea? Is there existing literature where I can mine data from? Am I going to provide primary data for this? So it's at this stage that you design. And if you're not able to design a project properly, you would have an issue implementing it. I had an experience one time in Sierra Leone where we had designed a project. And 2 years after, the project had gone into force, and a new minister arrived and said, well, I think we should include this. I think we should include this. And the coordinator of the project just sent the project design document to say, this project has been designed to do this, this, and this. And at this stage, we might not be able to impute new ideas, except we get to the stage of maybe a midterm review, or, that's the only time we could do something. But because this minister does not have a background, does not understand these things, she felt it was a political move. So you would always see these kinds of situations arise whenever you're doing projects. And then after this, it has to be approved. Of course, after approval, then you go into implementation. Implementation should be phased. You should have a phase. You should phase out your implementation, how you implement a project. Where do you start from? In the line of activities, what comes first, what comes later? Your procurement, what do you procure first? How do you procure? Where do you procure from? Your staffing and all of that. So all of this should come into thought when you're designing project. And then within implementation, like I mentioned, the midterm review takes care of the issues, like you're doing something, there should be a time where you assess what you've done. So that's what the midterm review, calls for. And then it's time to close the project. Then it's time to appraise what you've done, look at the milestones you set out to achieve and see if you have achieved all of that, and also hand over the assets. Then there's also a post-evaluation. The project lifecycle is a full seminar on its own. Then there's the evaluation of this project. What impact has this project done? And usually, the impact of a project could take up to 7 years to record the actual impact full impact of a project. Now, the next thing is to think about is, how do I develop my theory of change? You see, this is a critical, it looks simple, but this is one way to convince your funder or whoever you're working for or you're applying to that you're trying to, you know what you're doing. There's an actual problem, and this is how you intend to solve the problem. Of course, you've identified the problem, you've looked at the causes, you've seen what activities can be used to actualize the solutions that you seek. Now, you have itemized what the outcomes will be and also what the impact should be at the end of the project lifecycle. Now we'll come to the baseline. To do a baseline for a watershed management project, there are 4 key areas one would look at. The biophysical, where you look at, for water, you look at resources, quality, availability of water. For soil, you look at fertility, erosion, the nature of degradation, the slope, and all of that. Then you look at the type of vegetation that's found in where in the place. Would you need to fell trees? What would you actually need? You also need to take into consideration biodiversity. Also embedded in this would also be, are there endangered species around in that area that you need to, take care of? And then what are the natural risks in that environment? And then you should also do an assessment of the climate vulnerability to see what are the drivers. Is it flooding? Is it erosion? Is it, how is that area vulnerable to the effects of climate change? Then the second we would look at is socioeconomic issues. You need to get data on the patterns in their livelihoods, income sources, because these are the people you're trying to, empower, or that the people you're trying to develop a project to help. And so data on their livelihood, source of income, how much they depend on this resource will help you in things like developing a water user association manual, or designing something to help them manage this resource. The next would be also vulnerable groups, land tenure issues, and also access to this resource. I'd also mention the issues around inclusion, which is you could have financial inclusion, gender issues, and all of that. The third pillar is finance. So when looking at institutions and finance, you would look at policies, partners, and then co-financing. Where do I get available funds from? Who can I partner with? What are the legal frameworks to guide this concept? Take for instance, you go to a community and there are issues around, they have cultural heritage sites. What are the legal frameworks around doing activities around in this kind of areas? So you need to also look at existing policies. If the policies will not favor what you're doing, it's very important to first stop and then go to the stakeholders and have discussions, of course, policy dialogue and all of that. Get a green light before proceeding with all of what you've planned to do. And then the other area where we are always very focused on is the tools and data. Focus group discussions, surveys, community level data, satellite imagery, remote sensing, whatever is available. Government records, which are very, very important, although most of our governments rarely have up-to-date data on some things, but you could get historic data which could inform what you plan to do. And so here comes the next important step, which is how do I engage? Because up until now, you are designing your project alone or with your team. And now this is a very vital part of project design, which is ownership. It speaks to ownership of the project. If stakeholders are not involved at the time of design, you will have a lot of issues trying to implement that project. And so for what you want is a project that has high influence and has high interest from stakeholders. This is the kind of idea, this is kind of concept that will deliver what you intend for it to. You want to avoid ideas that have high influence, low interest. High influence could mean political, it could mean economic, but where the interest is low, it will be difficult to get the ownership of that idea or of that concept. Now, how do we track what we have done or what we are doing? This seminar is taking you through the overview of the project lifecycle, how we go from concept to impact. So at this point, you would need to identify indicators, key indicators. They should be specific, they should be measurable, they should be achievable. They should be time, measurable. You could time bound. You should include assumptions, risks, with possible mitigations. At this point, especially in natural resource management, you would have documents like the ESIA, which is Environmental Social Impact Assessment, or Environmental Social Management Framework, depending on the risk category of the project or the idea. Of course, at the point of a baseline survey, you would need to scope the project to categorize the risk of the project and to see what documentation is needed and the level of mitigations you would need. So at this point, for some common indicators include hectares developed, area of land restored, water quality, household water access, number of women or number of youth trained, and all of that, functional user groups. Now, remember when I started, I said it's important that even after you've identified what problem you want to solve and looking at the drivers of natural resource management, it's important that you blend it should be holistic. Because these days, while you're trying to, if you're doing a project that just takes care of one thing, you could be exacerbating or creating more problems without knowing. So it's usually good that when you are looking at management, which is of natural resources, it should be holistic. So in this sense, you would look at the cross-cutting themes, gender and social inclusion, develop important documents like your gender action plan, develop your stakeholder engagement strategy, or plan, climate resilience and nature-based solutions. Should I go with gray technology or green technology? Safeguards. What safeguards do I need to put in place? Now, at this point, this is where you bring in all of this and ensure that they are well mainstreamed into your concept or your project document. The next part of this would be how do I measure what I'm doing? And while measuring, what am I learning from this process? You would see that from my slide, you would see how this is actually illustrative. You would see how this person has tried to look at how long this is a project life cycle of just 1 year. So this person is looking at, okay, how long will it take me to do a baseline and develop a theory of change? How long will it take me to design or appraise the project? How long will it take me to get all I need to move to the field? For how long will I implement? How do I adapt to changes? Of course, at MTR. And then how do I close out? At every stage, it is important to capture lessons learned. Sometimes you attend supervision missions and listen to what we capture as lessons learned, and you see that they're not just lessons, but just trying to tick the box. Things like having a good grievance redress mechanism is key when you're doing anything within natural resource management, because um, um, it helps you check what's happening on the field and also check what's happening with your team. So first you plan, you track, you learn, and then you adapt. You have to ensure the supervision aligns with key decision points for effective project management. So this is my last slide, and this is the actual case study on watershed management. So first, you would see that what I intend to do is to restore degraded watersheds to improve ecosystem health, which is the perfect idea. Now, in doing this, I need to implement practices to protect soil and manage water resources sustainably. Now, if this is done, it will increase water absorption into the soil and then reduce soil erosion and sediment runoff. At the end of the day, it will lead to more consistent and resilient agricultural productivity. If you take this concept into any other project or any other idea you have, you should be able to tell the story of what you want to do from concept to impact. And it is when you've lined this out that you can now be able to go back. It's more like building a house from a finished plan. So at this point, you've already envisioned what the end will be. And then you now go back to break down each of the segments and ensure that they all lead to your end result. Now, what are some common challenges? Most times, or oftentimes, we see projects that are too complex, where one project wants to do everything, or it wants to do one thing without a clear direction on how that thing will be done. So it's important to avoid designs that are too intricate and difficult to implement or manage. If you've been in projects for a while, you would also notice that some projects have high staff turnover. And usually when the team that started, maybe that designed the project are no longer on the scene, and you have a new set of people who have come in to manage, if the project is not simple enough for them to understand, you would continue to have problems. And this brings me to an important document called the PIM, Project Implementation Manual, which is very key to helping whoever picks up that project to run it and manage it properly. Now, the next problem is weak baselines. It's important to ensure robust baseline data for effective monitoring and evaluation. Last is not the least, is the fact that usually M&E knowledge management are usually the least funded. And this is my personal experience. Oftentimes they are usually, especially knowledge management, is usually like an afterthought to say, oh, we need to show people that we're doing something. And it's okay, go and do a video. But usually these things are not planned before and enough resources devoted to them. So we need to provide adequate fund and staff monitoring, and also for M&E and learning activities. Now, here are some tips to mitigate risks and enhance project outcomes. You need to phase your delivery. You cannot do everything, model everything up. At the end of the day, it will be difficult to implement. You need to break down the projects into manageable phases for easier execution and learning. Then we need to build capacity and foster ownership within local communities and organizations. And this is where your stakeholder engagement is key. If you design a project alone, it will be, no matter how beautiful it is, it will be difficult to sell to the government or whoever your stakeholders are. But if at the time of concept development, you do it with them, then that ownership has been initiated from the onset, and it will be easy to carry on or sell that project. And finally, budget for course correction. We need to allocate resources for adaptive management based on M&E acknowledgement findings. Usually, when we design projects, we just allocate the resources for implementing the projects. But at midterm, you find out that some things have not gone the way they were planned. And it's in rare cases I have seen projects that have made allocations for these kinds of corrective issues. And that's why you see a project that would have been implemented in 4 years, but because of issues will now be implemented for 7 to 8 years because of these kinds of issues. Now I'll close with to just in 1 minute to tell the young people here just a personal story how I came into development. I came into development by volunteering. And if you're young and you want to come into development, that is the surest way, door to knock on. Volunteer. It helps you. It helps you gain access to materials. It helps you see how projects are written. It helps you understand what happens and how projects are managed. And then it helps you practice your skill. Because in development writing, talking is easy, but like actually doing the writing in the way your employer or a project wants it is the most important thing. Putting your thoughts in such a way that when someone picks up the document, it is easy to understand. What brought me to the first job I did was a concept note I had developed for a project that I was not even paid for. But one of the UN organizations saw the document at the presidential level in my country and said, who developed this? Would like to see the person because it aligns with what we are thinking of doing. And then, because the person who went to deliver the document was not the person who wrote it and she didn't know how to defend it, she brought me to do it. And so after explaining the document, it's got me an opportunity to be part of the design of a new project. And that was how my journey began with development. So I want to encourage any young person here, don't feel intimidated. Push your boundaries, build your capacity, continue to write, and send in those concept notes for approval. And definitely with time, you'd get better. And with this, I say thank you for having me this morning. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you so much for a wonderful, wonderful presentation and also sharing of your knowledge. Yeah, so if there to those of you who are in Zoom, so I see there's about 89, and also there's also some in YouTube. I don't know how many in YouTube. So for those of you who would like to ask questions, you can either write down in the chat or you can raise your hand and I will give you opportunity to ask directly also to Praise. So while we are waiting for some question, if I can ask some questions to you, that would, yeah, I would like to understand more of what you have shared with us. Well, there was this interesting point that you put down in your last slide about avoid design that are too intricate and difficult. So my question is, if the project itself is already complex, so how can you avoid complexity? I mean, with natural resource management, usually we are dealing with complex issue. So what do you mean by avoiding design that are too intricate? Because it's already part of that, right? So if you can explain.
Okay. One way of making a problem difficult is your approach to the problem. So if there's a problem, there's a problem. But how you take, for instance, I was doing the projects we were doing in Indonesia and Malaysia were around the haze issue. Those Jeff projects we were doing. Now, those projects, those issues are complex. But the way you itemize the activities will, if you break it down into manageable sizes, then you have solved the problem. Take, for instance, you want to develop the budget for a countrywide project. It's a huge task. But if your activities are not clear, if the site location is not known, if your baseline has not been done, then you will have all the problems that can be. So it's more in the approach to solving the problem than in the in the problem itself, because of course you could have a simple project and have a complex document because things are just all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's not just with the complex issues, but also with simple issues that people have. Okay, let me give you a good example. Have you written a one-pager document and circulated to colleagues to review, and it comes back as 10 pages? And the the idea has been entirely derailed. So my way of also solving this is to limit how many cooks that cook one document. Let the key persons, one way of derailing your document is to give it to 30 persons to review. Yes, in academia, it's different. But this is in practice. You want to implement a project that is time bound. I was designing a document, a funding proposal for adaptation fund, and someone who was also reviewing the document who lives in Belgium and has never been to Africa, who doesn't know how rice is produced, but is an expert, has a PhD in agriculture, was supposed to review the document. And so this guy started imputing theoretical ideas into this project, not looking at how much resources we have in terms of finance, manpower, and time available to implement this idea. So usually it's just, no matter how complex it is, take it easy, break it into small sizes, and make sure you can build a trail to how you solve the problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Then there's this someone from the chat here, Okmori Elizabeth. If you would like to ask questions directly, you can do so. You can open your mic.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Elizabeth. If you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay. Buchori Elizabeth, Abuja, Nigeria. So, sorry, I have just a few questions. First off, you said our indicators should be SMART. That is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Now, you just stated that this area is new, is not so familiar, which is true. I've done a lot of projects around health, good governance, and like that, but none in this area. So I would be glad if you can list some simple indicators for us. That's one. Then secondly, you, on your project at a glance slide, you have some ideas like concept development, ideation, design, and like that. Now, when it comes to implementation, we are meant to understand that monitoring is part of all the phases. That is, as you are implementing, if you discover your project is not in line with project objectives, you can then adjust and do what we call lessons learned or something like that. I don't know if this slide you gave us is different. If it is, can you please throw more light? Then for the final question, you said PIM, which is Project Implementation Manual. Is it the same as deep, detailed implementation plan? If not, please, what's the difference? Thank you.
Okay, your questions are packed, but yeah, thank you. Interesting questions indeed. What helps you choose indicators? It's not cast in stone. You're looking at the problem. Take for the example I gave, watershed management. What activities would lead to me having a good project on watershed management? Now, it is from these activities that I ask myself, how will I know that this has been done? Take, for instance, one of the activities is to check erosion. How will I know that this has been done? Now, the way you know that that activity has been achieved is the indicator. So take it to any other field, whether health. How do I know that I'm doing a project in malaria? How do I know that we have achieved this how many people received the mosquito nets? How many people have reported malaria cases after we did the activities we're supposed to do? So your indicators, yes, they are in all the fields. Over time, there are standard indicators, but this is actually what helps you measure, like you said, is this achievable? Is this realistic within the time frame that we have? Now, your second question around changing, doing M&E while you're implementing and changing. Well, what I've shared, what you're saying could happen within the NGO sphere. But usually, when you're dealing with the UN or multilateral, when you design, after design, you can't change anything until at midterm. And so that's why, in fact, it takes at least 1 year to design a project within the UN system. That's the fastest you could, design a project. Some projects take up to 2-3 years to design, and that's because of the complexity involved in, getting all the players, doing all the studies, and all of that. So, yeah, while it's a good idea to, as you go ahead, as you implement, you monitor and change, it will be difficult to track. Because one thing that helps you track at midterm review is to look at the project document at inception and look at the indicators that were set. It is now these indicators that you track at midterm to say, these were the indicators we set at inception. Have we been able to, achieve them? It is also at midterm you say, okay, what has gone wrong and what can we do? This is also for budget issues, accountability, and that's why it's like that. And then, sorry, can you remind me of your final question?
Okay, my final question is, you said project implementation manual.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I get it now. So, okay, yes, within the NGO sphere, it's called a lot of different things, but within multilateral and development, organizations, it's usually known as either the project or the program implementation manual. You could call, yeah, it's the same document, but it is detailed and lets you know what to do step by step, such that even when you have a new person who joins the team and picks up the document, it is easy to continue implementing from where the other person left. Thank you. I don't know if I've tried to answer your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Buchori, for the question, and thank you, Praise. So let's go to the next one. I think I'm going to read because it's in the chat. So one is from, let me see. Oh, it's gone. Okay, there was this question on how specific, is this especially for a specific field? Or yeah, how is this, how general is this what you have been explaining? Is it just field specific or can it be for any type of project?
Okay, this is for development projects, mostly projects implemented within the United Nations, the World Bank, and these big organizations. However, these concepts, what we've shared this morning, you can apply it anywhere. It could help you in your personal, you want to start a business. If you have, I tell my colleagues that when I want to retire, I'll just pick one of these well-designed documents and just go and implement it on my own. So it helps. It gives you that resilience. It gives you that discipline to know how to implement projects. It helps in the way you think as well. So it's a good practice to know how to design or write. We might have a class on doing a concept note. Now, I failed to say that at the idea stage, you could have a one-pager. In fact, if you cannot condense your idea into a one-pager or at most 2 pages, then it's already complex. So most times, a country director could say, we want to solve this problem. Can you give me the idea? Give me a one-pager. If you're able to condense this idea in one page, then it's a high indicator that you can implement. Because what should come into one page is the background, the problem, the objectives, the components, and then what you intend to achieve, and also the resources you need. If you can put all of this in one page, then it can now help you to design a concept note. Now, the concept notes could be between 10 and 20 pages. For organizations like the World Bank and IFAD, where they would need, at concept stage level, there are annexes that are required. Take, for instance, the SECAP, which is Social Environment Climate Assessment Procedure. There are basic annexes that should come at what stage. If you're developing a funding proposal for, say, the GCF, we did a funding proposal that had 25 annexes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Okay,
so
thank you.
It just depends.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question is from Izzy Irawan, from the Hetok Milah Lestari Foundation from Papua, from South Papua.
Yeah.
So the question is about impact. I have a question about the impact of the project. How can we make sure that development projects really respond to what communities need rather than just meeting donor priorities? Ooh.
This is a real question.
Yes.
You see, it's a two-way question, because usually if the stakeholders are not real stakeholders, then you cannot get this problem solved. If the stakeholders are more political, then they'll be aligning their priorities to that of donors. Because, of course, it's more political than the actual problem. But if the real stakeholders have been met at baseline or at idea stage, then the real problem is known and the people are carried along to say exactly what they need. I recently did a project. I went to supervise a project on aquaculture, and they were doing this cage farming in the middle of the sea. And so the guy, they said they needed a boat to be able to go from shore, to the sea to harvest or check on their fish. And one of the colleagues I went with, who is a senior colleague than myself, but that was his first time in the region. He doesn't understand this. He said, well, I don't think they need it. And I think they might be having issues with overfishing. So, from his own understanding, he couldn't even see what the problem is. He could not understand the problem. So that's usually also, like I said, it's two-way. But one way to control it is make sure that when you hear that a project is coming to your area, that you attend and bring up what the issues really are. Oftentimes at this stage, people are not usually interested in attending. But this is deciding factor of what you get and what the program or what the project delivers to you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, because we see many projects that well, maybe the community thinks that they don't really need it, but since the World Bank came, or the government, so yeah. So I think your important point is that there should be community involvement, yeah, in during the implementation itself. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. The next question is from Shifa Rinubari. Shifa Alfia, sorry, Shifa Alfia. And she is from the Rhino Bahari community in Ujung Kulon, that's in West Java. So the question is, how can local institutions be empowered to manage environmental projects independently after donor support ends, especially in rural or coastal areas where capacity and resources are often limited? Sustainability there.
Yes. This is very, very important. Now, if I find myself in this position and there's a project, one thing I will do is to continue building my capacity. Because if you depend on your capacity to be built by the project, oftentimes it's not usually enough. And it's not usually in depth the way you need it. It could just be a 1-day training, 2 days training, where everybody. But it's important that development actors in rural settings do all they can to improve their own capacities. Because it is when you've developed yourself, read online, attend webinars like this, reach out to people personally. Because usually the way these projects are, yes, we talk about sustainability, but it's not usually well implemented. So if you know what you want, it's usually the best not to rely on what the project is bringing. If you're working on let's say you're working on a project that's doing conservation. Now, while working with the project for 3-4 years, you have learned something. Nothing stops. You've seen the documents, you've seen how well they were written. Nothing stops you from getting an idea, mirroring the way these projects have been written, and start looking for small grants to implement something like that. Now, this helps you as an individual. It also helps your community because you're not depending on the project. This is me thinking outside what the usual norm is. Because, yes, we talk about sustainability all the time, but in practice, it's when a project ends, everything goes with it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So have you seen experienced a project that can sustain in your
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. One example is in Chad. I lived in Central Africa and did about 8 countries there. One example is in Chad, where they had a project on it was nutrition sensitive. They were looking at using moringa to supplement the health of these people. Of course, Chad is very arid. It's a desert region. In fact, one of the meals I had, there was no vegetable. They had to shred meat into, like spongy like to give the soup some texture. So there were no vegetables. But by the time I came to work on that project, this Moringa project had been implemented like 10, 15 years before I came. But I now saw that everywhere I went, people had produced a business from this idea. And it was no longer a project leading it. It was now individuals doing this. And I usually encourage people, think about the individual level. It's the most important. If you're waiting for the community to do anything, not everybody has the sense of urgency and need you have.
Right.
And also, not everybody has the kind of drive you would have. Some people are waiting for one person to do something before they join. So if you take the initiative and start small, it's important. Another example is in 2012, I and a friend saw an advert by IFAD to do a honey, an apiary. Okay, no, it was a youth program. And so we submitted an idea, and our idea was to build an apiary. And we were the only group to do the apiary. That our idea was apiary. So IFAD was interested in. Now, this was long before I started working with IFAD. This was 2012. I started working with IFAD in 2017. Now, after they had, our group were just 10, and each of us we were given 200,000, naira then. And so we pulled the resources together and established this apiary. Today, it is just 2 members that are running that apiary.
Oh, wow.
What happened after the project ended? The other 8 said, give us our investment. It's our money, and you can have your projects. And the business paid off the 8 persons, and 2 persons remained. And that project is still going on. And that business is supplying good honey to that locality and beyond. So don't usually rely on the sustainability of a project. As an individual, look for how to learn from the process, equip yourself with soft skills and also hard skills to implement the projects that you're working on. It's a way to help yourself and also empower other persons.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now there's a person here, I'm not sure if Loveth Ehiha from Ebonyi State, Nigeria. Do you want to ask something yourself? Because she just wrote her name down, but I'm not sure you want to ask something. If you want to ask something, you can open your mic. Or no? Okay. If not, then I'll go to the next question. From, let's see, who is it? From Shalom, yeah? From Grace Ashaka. Okay, thank you very much for the session. It has been very insightful. And the question is, considering that M&E is a continuous process that still continues after the project is fully implemented, what's a reasonable percentage of the project budget that should be allocated to M&E and course correcting? Oh, important question here, budget.
Yes. Usually, say for the World Bank, a project will be broken down into one technical, component, which looks at capacity and all of that, the soft side of things, and then one practical, the implementation, and then you now look at, or maybe 2, depending on the subject matter, and then you now look at the component that looks at project management. There's usually a cap. If you spend more than 25 to 30% to implement a project, then you're already having issues. So usually between 25 to 30% is needed to implement your idea. Now, within that 25 or to 30%, 60% should go into 45 to 50% should go into salaries and all of that. And then the rest should now be split between monitoring, evaluation, knowledge management, maybe gender actions and all of that. And that's, so to answer your question, between 13 to 15% of the budget should be ideal to take care of learning, correction, because if you need more than 15% to correct something, then it means it was not even designed in the right way. Because what correcting is, okay, it's going slightly off the course and we're trying to bring it back. But if you put more than that, then that's a new design altogether. So yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes I've seen at MTRs, I've seen where we had to drop an entire activity because, or there was a funder, a co-financer that was envisaged at design, but then when they were supposed to release the resources, they didn't come with it. And so, and there were some activities that were tied to that part of the co-financing. So at this point, what do? We just have to drop and continue with what we're doing. So yeah, so there are ways around it. But usually you should not need more than 15% of the budget allocated to M&E to correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks so much. Well, there are more comment on the sustainability. Josh Flama has some comment, and then Eva Christine also answered that comment. Josh, do you want to say something yourself? Straight? Or shall I read it for you? Is Josh here? I think I would just like to.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Josh, you want to say
so
something?
Much.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Da. The presentation. I was fortunate to have worked with the African Development Bank in Liberia, and I'm a Liberian, and I learned a lot. We may design the sustainability plan, but in more or like community context, and like that just is a 20/80 approach. You will come to realize that out of the 100%, only 20% or so will be able to adapt to it, but more like community context based as to what they want to adapt as a sustainability plan, and more or like not funding per se. You see, when they learn, the early adapters and all of the kind of people, they can pass the idea on, and that drives sustainability more than just funding. Funding is far outside of that. It's the will of the people to adapt, and buy into the idea of sustainability that will be designed. So thank you. That's the input I wanted to make. Thank you.
Yeah, can I also ask a question on sustainability, please, so that you can address?
Okay, sure, yeah. Emeka.
Yeah, thank you. My perspective on sustainability is that I've been involved in the development work for over 10 to 15 years in Nigeria, and I see that there is no what I call political will in the area of the funders looking at sustainability as an issue from design. That's what I feel as a person. So I don't know if this conference can, put in a little more time in the recommendation that will get the funders to begin to look at the issue of sustainability to be captured at the design stage. This will help both participants and then the communities that are beneficiaries to begin to look at the big picture instead of what is just before us. That's my view. Thank you.
Very important. Thank you, Emeka.
Can I respond to? Yeah, okay. Yeah, you see, there's a part of the project document called exit strategy. And that is where everything about what happens after the project has been completed. That's where everything should be designed or should be written. And the reality is the fact that oftentimes, because we just want to do the project, the enthusiasm is just to implement. there's usually less, attention given to that side of things. So, if your exit strategy is well embedded in the project design document, then it helps you solve the problem. And that's the main issue, because usually with the World Bank or African Development Bank, if something is not enshrined in the project design document, it is difficult to implement it later on. Very, very extremely difficult, because it will bring up issues around ineligible expenditure and all of that. Yeah. Okay. So I agree with you. That the exit strategy should be properly enshrined in the project design document, and then it should be driven by some designated staff in the project. Because if it is in the document and it is not driven by anybody, it will just sit in the document and nothing will happen. Exactly. So usually it should sit with the M&E officer who sees everything, who has a dashboard, and the finance person who sees everything. So if this happens and there's someone responsible for it, then it's fine and we won't have issues with that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's way to go. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So thank you for the conversation. I myself often wonder about this, the donor. Sometimes I think we, the executor, the people on the ground, we should be educating the donor also, because the donor, sometimes they have such a short-sighted objective. So I wonder if there's that opportunity for donor to learn from us in the field and then change the way about sustainability, for instance. Yeah. Anyway, that's just a comment. Okay, so there's this one question I think is important that I should read to you. It's from, let's see, do I have it here? From Irina Frill. Yes, from Sriwijaya University. So, how can development project balance the short-term needs with long-term sustainability goals? Oh, okay. This is more or less already answered, because we already discussed about that. How can development project foster resilience and adaptability in the face of changing contexts? Oh, okay. Do you want to add more?
Yes.
Or? Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. So changing contexts. It will still boil down to what you do at baseline. Because if you have the quality of data you have at baseline will go a long way to speak to whether you solve the problem or whether you do not. And if you're working in contexts where the accessibility to data is zero, then the onus lies on you to have the capacity to pick up this data, go to the field, and get primary data. Sometimes you might find yourself working for projects that will not allocate enough resources for this. It's important to flag it at inception and ensure that the necessary, because if you do some work and it's a bad project, it will be on your CV. And anywhere someone who knows about the project sees your CV and sees you worked on that project, it will not be to your credit. It will just be, okay, you have some donor experience. So sometimes, like Prof said, it's also important to look at, we are usually at the receiving end as implementers, but we should also remember that some of these resources are coming to your countries as loans. There are very few grants these days. So if something is coming to you as loan, you should also be able to say, this is what we need. And then the donor is able to, you guys can come to a roundtable and discuss on what the compromises will be. But to swallow what the donor brings hook, line, and sinker at the to detriment of your own people and the economy is not the best. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have to unmute myself. We have 10 more minutes. My time flies very fast. So there are a few comments, just a general comment on sustainability. So it seems that this issue is really quite interesting to our, to all of those here. So there's this comment from Ma'ruf Yaqub. Project sustainability is a key part in design. It's usually not so much emphasized concept and design. Okay, so that's his thoughts. Thank you for sharing that. If you want to comment on that later, Praise, but I would like to also read from Shinidu Basse, sorry if I mispronounce your name. Sustainability needs to be redefined. Aha. I like this. It doesn't really need to be about availability of fund to continue interventions, but the mindset or mainstreaming that concept into your organization strategy. It is about your interest and belief in the project to let it run through your organization's strength, which should not be limited by availability of fund.
It also depends on the type of activity you want to sustain. If it is capital intensive, you need resources. If it has to do with soft skills, why not? Pull it, take it, run with it. So it actually depends on the context you find yourself. Sustainability should be, how can I do something that outlives me? How can I do something in a way that someone else will benefit from this pool of resources? Be it manpower, be it experience, be it financial resources, whatever it is. Of course, looking at natural resource management, we're constantly designing new things. But having these skills, knowing what documents to attach to, what annex to drive or to support your concept is very, very important. Remember that one of the key takeaways from this is being confident enough to develop a concept note or to write a document that helps you attract grants or funding. I know that in the future we would have more classes where we'll take each of these to do like live sessions. We just bring up an idea and then we go through it together and we build an idea from scratch and see how it works. And then look at these key areas, look at how to draft a sustainability, an exit strategy. What do you need? What's the donor looking for? What does the government need? What do I need to be in the strategy? So I know with time we'll do some of these things. Thank you.
Yeah. It seems that some people are asking about that. Is there an opportunity for us to, learn how to write a one-page concept note with you? So if that comes an opportunity for that, maybe we can have 2-hour training or so, to design.
Yes, I know I'll be in Jakarta early next year, and so we could have live sessions. Yeah.
Half-day meeting with you and how to write a concept note. Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. One question that I would like to ask, because listening to this development project and sustainability, I think for development project and sustainability, I think it's something that is more feasible. But when you're talking about conservation project, for instance, you want to conserve the tigers or or even monitoring tigers or orangutan, it seems that the government has this responsibility to do monitoring of the tigers, but then there usually lack of funding to do the monthly monitoring. So then they are left to the donor, the funder, to help guard the national park, etc. So how can you have sustainability if it's a conservation project? Do you think it's possible?
Yes, it's very possible. Very, very possible. And like I said, it depends on the stakeholders that were met at the inception of that idea, or at the conception of that idea. If the stakeholders say, this is what we need to happen, then the donor has to meet those requirements. Because what we don't also know is that donors must disburse.
Okay.
So if they are not disbursing, then they're not doing their job. Let us not always see ourselves at the receiving end, and that if we don't get these resources, everything will go bad. No, donors are also under pressure to disburse, because yes, one of their indicators is how much you have disbursed.
Yeah, so, but that means that you are still dependent on the donors, though.
Yes, because their funding is usually what brings the spark. The country is burdened with a lot of issues that they will not make conservation the front burner. Take, for instance, Sierra Leone, a post-conflict country, or Liberia, or the Gambia, wherever. They have more pressing issues. And if you say, I want to monitor, I want to, conserve a tree, it would happen in England where I am. And they will understand it because they've solved some of the basic needs they have. And so when you say you want to do a project to monitor flood levels and all of that, and you want to use a network of soil, whatever, they're happy, they're excited. But the person in Africa whose issues are still basic cannot devote part of his budget to conservation because he needs to get out of poverty first.
Yeah.
And so it's also how we sell these ideas that will determine the kind of buy-in the stakeholders will have and the interest the people will have. So conservation is important, but we need to drive it from within and also from external. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Praise. We have come to the end of the time of the webinar. And on behalf of CTSS and everyone here, it's been a pleasure. It's wonderful to hear your presentation and also sharing your experience. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And also thank you for everyone who has been part of this seminar. So we had a full house here because we're full of 100. And then we also have some more in the YouTube. So this has been a great success. And I see that some of you have said that if we are going to have that training, that you are also going to be interested and be part of that. So yes, we'll keep you updated. We have all your data and your contact, hopefully. But if it's offline in Jakarta, maybe you cannot join. But yeah, we'll figure out something, right, Praise?
Yes, we will.
We can have hybrid or something.
Yes.
Okay. So Praise, thank you so much once again. Lovely seeing you again, and hope I'll see you in Jakarta.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. I'm so happy. Thank you, Maruf. I saw you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
I'll see you.
See you.